All right. Jim, which is this number? What, 6, 7? Where are we at?
Way more than that, man.
Really?
Yeah.
24?
Not that much. Somewhere in between, though.
Okay. All right. Well, happy holidays. A little early, but welcome everybody. And we are going to talk about risk to revenue conversations today, but really talking in terms of how business owners can understand what we're speaking about. That'll be the main thematic, but kind of the agenda today that we're going to kick things off is just to check in with Chip and Leron and see if we have any updates from the dev side, get any feedback that you guys may have had if you were on last week about our conversation with Kevin Kilpatrick and how he views SaaS alerts, and now it's become ubiquitous in this stack, just like EDR and other things. We'll talk about an upcoming webinar that we've got planned with Spencer Pollock, one of the leading breach attorneys in the country. And then we'll go through some risk-based conversations on how we can communicate better to our customers and prospects to get them to take action. And we'll use the MITRE ATT&CK framework to help us develop scenarios that we can derive these from. So with that, let me start off with Chip and Leron and see if you guys got anything up your sleeve, so to speak, in your stocking, anything like that.
Thanks, Andrew. So I'll jump in here.
Yeah, let me.
We don't have anything new feature-wise to announce. We generally go into not a code freeze, but a feature freeze after Thanksgiving, and spend the rest of the year doing refactoring and making improvements. There's always little bugs here and there, and that's kind of what we have the development team work on to wind down before we jump in full bore. We're doing a lot of research on new events that we want to bring in. One of the things that's really pertinent to the discussion lately is Microsoft has recently released a new endpoint that is still in the beta thread of the API that's going to let us track a lot more information about Microsoft Exchange and threats inside Exchange. So for anybody who's using Defender, we'd actually be able to pull out virus alerts, which is not something we've ever done before. We haven't been able to examine, emails for those sorts of things. So we have a new suite of tools available to us starting early next year to start digging deeper into the BEC side of things. For everybody on the call, Jim and Andrew and I have had multiple conversations. Maybe Rex, they should reach out.
I was trying to hold back on that stuff laughing, but that was well played, Ben.
Yeah, it was. One of the topics we've been discussing since last week internally is really something that we want some feedback from this group about, and that's regarding how deep you guys want to see us go with respect to examining email information. I described to Jim and Andrew that my experience with our partner community as a whole, not representing anybody, is that the community is really split, kind of schizophrenic around this topic of how far they want us to go into evaluating content in order to look for potential problems. And phishing is the biggest one, phishing and spear phishing. Like, you really can't create an alerting system for phishing and spear phishing without actually reading the content of people's inboxes. I think some of our partners would be in favor of that, but a lot of our partners are so sensitive as it is about what kind of data SaaS Alerts is managing. We've taken great pains, but not actually download and store any customer data at all. We convert every log that we study, we convert into an event that's unique to SaaS Alerts. It's not customer data, even remotely. So I am interested in getting some feedback from the group about, is this a turn that we should take with the product that you think our partner community is going to support? And you guys on this call, if we back out the SaaS Alerts people in the call, I think you represent about 5% of our total partners. So, it's a group we want to hear from, but we're going to have to open this up to a broader conversation. So with that, I'll stop and see which of our regulars or maybe somebody new wants to chime in and flow some opinions.
Yeah. And Jim, while maybe some people are thinking of opinions on, I'm sorry, Chip, while people are thinking of opinions on that, I'll just, if I could share my screen real quick. A lot of this comes from, we're going to talk later, and obviously this is nothing you'd ever want to show your customers, but we're going to talk later about how MITRE does, and MITRE Attack does a great job at looking at the tactics, techniques, and procedures that threat actors use, and where it really started to come up was, as Chip indicated, around phishing and being able to understand how a threat actor works, which is obviously they get into there's all sorts of things, whether it's just monitoring, creating new accounts, whether it's just mail forwarding, etc. So I just wanted to give you some context around the conversation. Is that fair, Chip?
Chip, you're on mute.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll stop sharing my screen, but I just wanted to give you some context on where this conversation started.
Yeah, but Chip's question's a really good one.
And just so you all know, I see Andy's got his hand up there and has for a
Okay.
while. I don't know if that's still in play or not.
Andy, let's go. Let's hear it. You're on mute.
Well, my question really is I don't know if it's in your company's best interest to become an email protector. And so my question is, you guys have a unique way of being able to respond and alert, perhaps integrating to other mail services that do this already might be the real way to go about this. I'm thinking of, we use Mail Protector. If I was able to get real-time alerts or some real feedbacks and to be able to have potentially you take action in Mail Protector, that would be a value to me because that allows me to automate better some of our responses that come up.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the avenues that we've considered. Should we partner with someone, or not necessarily partner with anybody in particular, but look at other third-party products that provide the service already, that also provide APIs that we can plug into and pull the data and then correlate it across the user account. That's definitely an option. It's potentially a more expensive option for the MSP community, rather than having an all-in solution. On the other hand, if everyone's going to use a third party anyway that specializes in that kind of activity, maybe it's the most sensible approach.
Outside of Mail Protector, who else is using anything else?
Well, I would think being vendor, if it were possible to use something that was vendor agnostic, if that was possible, would be best, because you'd never have it's so fragmented into so many percentages of who uses what. Chase your tail. Even if you went with the masses, you wouldn't be fulfilling. You don't know that SaaS alerts is with the masses of email protection. I use Aid because it integrates with the API and it's undetectable. Since you just asked who uses something.
Okay, cool. So Mail Protector, got an Avanan by Checkpoint. Okay. And looks like Ben also uses Vade. And he also mentioned before, Chip, I don't know if you saw his comments, his mic isn't working. That basically permissions would be key.
Do you guys plan on using Respond as a way to help to respond to some of these phishing? That's where I think the real power is when you start to add the other feature sets within SaaS alerts to deal with some of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we're going to start a deeper integration and looking more deeply at email, specifically in email threats, we would certainly make Respond capable of plugging in those events and allowing the partners to build rules and triggers to react to that. No question. So does anyone use Defender for email protection with their clients?
Dave says yes. Bill, yes.
Vade
no.
integrates with Defender, so so yes, but I'm relying on Vade, but Vade integrates with their API. So yes, just not solely.
Okay. Okay. So a lot of, we've got some Avanons, some Defenders. They integrate. Okay. Huntress with Defender. Okay. All good stuff.
Well, there's some good info here. We'll continue to push the topic internally. So let me then turn the focus for just a second on what we do today that can help with business email compromise. When you consider how accounts are used and what we already do monitor with respect to Exchange and email accounts, it's not as if we're blind to this as we stand. So partners today can use Respond to put together a rule that encompasses any number of underlying event triggers that you would want. For instance, multiple login failures, multiple lockouts, followed by a successful login from an external or an unapproved location, followed by email forwarded being set up, followed by a big uptick in the number of emails, or in an uptick in the number of emails that are sent locally with attachments or items shared through emails. All of those are events that we already cover, and that when pulled together in a logical sequence that makes sense to you as an MSP, can be an indication that you have an account that is compromised, and then follow on to being compromised is being used for business email compromise to run a phishing campaign, run a spam bot campaign, do any of the nefarious things that bad actors want to do with it. Do we have anyone on the call who's constructed an alert or a rule that looks anything like that to look for the behavior signature of the EC?
Using Respond?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, using Respond, correct.
That would be something to have in your training or available to us would be really helpful. I was just thinking about what you were saying when you were saying this, tying it back to the MITRE and saying, here's how SaaS Alerts responds in this segment, and here's what the partner can do to take advantage of this more effectively. Because then that becomes a marketing piece, since we're only, 2% of the MSP marketplace right now with SaaS Alerts?
Yeah. Ish. You have, as of today, 655 partners. We're still an exclusive group. You guys are pioneers. Yeah, we should definitely put that together. So it actually should be a part of the onboarding, I think, experience in terms of if we put it together and we make people aware that this is something that
I think there's so much being
Doing.
consumed in onboarding that this is definitely like a level 2, first get it operational. And by the way, are you aware that you could actually map the MITRE attack framework to this? This is how you protect against these elements.
Okay, good feedback. Anybody else want to chime in? Well, we're asking questions. I have one because it just came up yesterday. It's top of mind. So all of you guys are using us and to various degrees, but we appreciate your participation on this. And there's a lot of folks on here that have really leveraged the technology. But as we look to expand other aspects of the platform, right? Like some people have asked us about license management, discovering how many people, licenses are in play for 365, for instance, maybe even other applications, discovery. Where do people stand on that? Like, is that something that you would want from us in terms of the licensing piece? Because like we found out the other day, going through some stuff that we had one customer that had 17 unused 365 licenses, but they're paying for them. Is that something that people would? Okay.
Thumbs up
Scott-
from Andy.
Andy says yes. Scott says no. Okay. Ben says I like SaaS alerts being more security focused. Ryan says no. Okay.
Jim, is it worth asking how people handle this today, if they handle
Yes.
this today at all?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I would love to understand that. Okay, Lion Guard, MSP Easy Tools, Lion Guard. Okay, IT Glue. Lion Guard. So on the licensing side, the information that's important to you is, okay, how many are being paid for, who's using them, who's not using them, type of thing. Okay. I saw Andy shaking his head yes.
I'm just thinking you got an audience here that's really focused on security, and that's the answers that you're getting, not
Yeah.
the customer
That's good.
relationship.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think we view you as a unique, especially up to now,
Mhm.
a unique insight on who's accessing our clouds from where, and is there a new device? You know, all of the security information that you want
Right.
to know that's not hardware based. And so that's invaluable, even if you don't have a response to it, just to know it.
Yep.
And so growing on that, and now you have responses to it, and that's
Mhm.
great. But when I say we, well, I'll speak for the 1%, enjoy the security and informational aspect of that versus making it a tool of efficiency,
Mhm.
or, like that's what lying, so many people are cross-referencing or not cross-covering,
Correlating.
correlating, cross-correlating efficiency and billing and user counts and endpoint counts. It's SaaS alerts is security, cloud security. Just my opinion. It's so
No.
if there were something to grow, it would be something, which this is my first meeting, so my brain's trying to catch up to what you all may have talked about the last between 6 and 16 meetings into the US or 36 or whatever. But would be something, and email specific. I was trying to get my head around it, but again, there's 5,000 email protectors. It's so I'm trying to catch up, but I would say keeping it in the global cloud security management information area where so many people lack or companies lack.
Mhm.
Even when we do our pen tests, it's you really check the cloud. I don't want to get into that. I'm just saying the cloud is a separate area.
Yep.
That we need the most visibility as possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Into speech.
That's helpful. Because I'll share some of the feedback we get some folks, right? They're like, wow, you have all this information. It would be nice to have SaaS alerts be obviously security focused and don't lose that. People love that, right? But also have some of the additional tangential information, because the feedback is, hey, look, I've got so many tools right now, right? If like you can add one or two tangential features, that I can drop one or two other tools, maybe make it more cost effective for me, right, as a vendor, and just make it that much easier for me to manage. Because we talk to people, they've got like 40 or 50 vendors at this point. And I'm just wondering, at some point, does it become a call for just more consolidation of activity?
Well, I was speaking from if it were to be an expense for you to add the feature to make SaaS alerts more popular
Mhm.
versus if you're able to gain market share by adding features that can eliminate them using a certain company
Mhm.
or a certain category of companies because you already have this amount. If you
Right.
add this, then you can get more market share. That's a business decision.
Right,
I'm
right.
just saying, as far as like, what can we do to make SaaS alerts more valuable, even if it's our expense and we're gonna have to engineer it, we're gonna have to work it out, and there's no market share other
Right.
than popularity, then no, we don't. I wouldn't want the
Mhm.
reporting that you were talking about. But if it helps you gain that, okay, I don't use it if I don't like it.
Right, right.
You know,
Yeah.
that was my point, was if it's going to be an expense to you, don't be what you're not. But if you're going to help consolidate, like you just said, then I'm all, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Not going to make me hate you. I hate,
So-
ever since they started telling me who had Office 365, I forget them.
Yeah.
So that was my point.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
let me
Yes.
jump off of something that you said when the previous set of comments that you made about device information. And Ben is having a sidebar chat with a couple of people about Intune right now on the call that I'm sort of also watching with one eye. Today, SaaS Alerts provides device information around when new devices are used for an account. And we provide what we call, what Microsoft and even Google call, so we've adopted the name, the agent information, meaning the device type and OS and application that's used for a particular activity. We've started kicking around the notion of going after the Intune specific data, which is going to provide more depth on that. And I hear, I noticed Ben bouncing that around in their background. So I'm interested in knowing, as long as this is kind of turning into us questioning you guys about what we might want to research. What are your thoughts on that? Is there a lot of value in us bringing Intune data in, or is the Intune information that you're getting directly from the Intune management console enough for you guys, and it doesn't really add any value to SaaS alerts?
It's been enough. I guess it would be if it became an incident. You always want more. But with the knowledge that I get, you even get the name of the person's phone, whatever it's named. You get a lot. But I haven't had anything become, it's kind of like video surveillance. If something happens, you couldn't have enough cameras, but if nothing happened, then, so it's been adequate. Doing that, I think, would, especially if there's you all know the global or national rate of those actually becoming incidents. No, I can't. Andrew's gonna have a heart attack. I can't speak as fluid as you, Andrew. It's all right.
What are you talking?
You're like, ah!
No.
So,
Keep going.
so that would be the point. If you all get like, hey, this happened, we had an event, we know some of the information, but we didn't get enough to actually figure out who it was, or we didn't get enough product information to hunt it down to resolve our problem, then yes. Otherwise, it's been fine for me. But to have that wouldn't hurt. I don't know what the expense would be. I'm just thinking business. If it's going to cost you more, no, unless you have people that have had incidents that want more.
Well, one of the big questions I have is how many organizations are actually using Intune, are even bothering with Intune. It seems to be a pretty small number.
Well,
so
I'm sorry. That was what I was going to remark, Charles, that there are customers that don't afford it, don't subscribe to it. And having information like, hey, your email is being accessed from a device that you don't normally use, be it your phone, your iPad, your work computer, your home computer. Hey, we should take an action. We should be alerted to that. I think that's a value, right? Because I'm thinking about the small practices and smaller businesses that don't want to pay for that premium. Excuse me.
Yeah. So how do we surface that, Andy? We already provide that information, right? Like if your customer organizations were really interested in looking at that information, you could be sending them a report daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever you want, that would show them what devices are connecting and using accounts.
See, that's where I want to use
How do we
Respond.
get that in front of them?
So that's what I want to do, is use Respond in those situations and say, hey, look, we want to send an alert, text, whatever. And that would be a wonderful way to escalate. If I'm able to send communication to the support team via text, or to the customer on a known good device that says, hey, look, is this you? That kind of respond action would be helpful.
Can I just interject?
So is it simple enough? Is it as simple as you just creating a respond rule that on a new device connection that you send that out, as the trigger is that you send a notice to the support team, to your customer, that we've detected a new device? Is it that simple?
And to be able to suppress it during onboarding, or to be able to bring one together as a master document and compare against known good MAC addresses, however you look at it that way. Because I think that adds a value of security that we're all trying to obtain. Is your device that's getting access to this one of those that you use regularly? Or is it a new onboarding process and we have to start with a whitelist, right?
But you want that to go to a customer,
Yeah. So,
right?
yeah,
I'm
that's
agreeing
a
that we
really
have to get the
important
whitelist
point.
from the customer. I'm sorry, Charles. Chip.
The point that we don't catalog a whitelist today of devices, and we could, because we see them.
Yeah.
So I think that the direction that you're leading me anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it would be really useful if we actually had interaction with the MSP technical team that said, hey, this is a new device. Is it approved or not? And we'll hold on to that information for the future. Is that what you're driving at?
I'm looking at what I do with ThreatLocker and whitelisting applications on the device. I think knowing what devices are being used by SaaS, the SaaS alerts has visibility on, would be very helpful. I think that's a next evolution in this process for us. Does anyone disagree with that?
What's that, Chip?
So are you taking notes?
Yeah, we're going crazy in the product Slack channel right now. So we're taking notes.
So
Great.
can I just bring this all the way back? I would love to hear Ben, because Ben's making a lot of comments in chat, and get his perspective on this. But Jim, I do want to come back and then bring Ben on. I think you brought up something really important, and that is the number of applications that MSPs use today. You mentioned that could you consolidate apps, and which I think, if you can, is important, and if so, which ones? Because the other threat vector that has and will be exploited is API integrations, and so again, if MSPs can use fewer tools, to me that's going to be a benefit, as long as they're getting equal value. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, but then shift it to Ben. Can you come on? Because you've shared a lot of really good information. So I'm just wondering if
He's going to see what he can do here with this microphone
okay.
/ phone. His microphone's not working.
But you know what I'm saying, Jim, based on
Yeah.
what you said, because it's not just features, that's one piece of it. But there's also you're competing as an MSP, right? You're competing for dollars, right? It's not just about SaaS alerts. It's you want to get as much value and coverage, right? Defensive coverage as you can per hard dollar, right? Your cost of goods sold,
Right?
Because you got to spend. Let's just say your max per endpoint is just role play with me is $55 hard COGS.
Right.
Well, if I can get $60 worth because this one tool gives me an extra $5, and I can get rid of this other tool that was charging me an extra $10, that's huge.
It is. That's well put. Is more or less the basis of my question or my thought process. Just because we have people that are bringing it up to us. Hey, if you could just you have the information, if you just extend it and provide this report or do, this, like we might be able to drop, this one and this one.
Well, and if I could just give some context for everybody to chime in, Jim, to your point. So I did this, the community call that we're doing right now. I started with a company called Cyber CNS, and we did it with Perch, but with Cyber CNS specifically, the people that were using that, the reason we eventually they said, well, can you add this piece of AD hygiene discovery? Can you do this? Because, we not only are using Network Detective, but we're also using, what's the other one that does the AD? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank from Kaseya. Cyberhawk.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could give everybody here in the SaaS Alerts community that analogy, right? We were on this call, like our community call, week after week after week. And they're like, well, you're pulling this AD information. Could you pull this, this, and this? And if you do, then we don't have to buy these appliances. We don't have to do this. We don't have to do this. And the team did it. And it was, it was huge for partners because they were able to save tremendous amounts of money and get an equally, if not better, product. So I think it's a really important point to not just be kind of just brushed over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone want to add to that? Respond to it?
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. I reiterate to gain market share. Sorry, Andy, to gain market share, to help consolidation. I'm all for whatever your market research tells you to do. As just a feature, that's a different answer, but that doesn't, I don't care. I want you all to have, like hypothetically with a good RMM and then if Lion Guard kind of gets, I'm not trying to say names. I'm just trying to say those types of devices. I don't know what else I'm getting, more, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Is anything really happening that?
What might be a good thing to do is to take the Cyber CNSs of the world, the Lion Guard, the SaaS Alerts, and see what how do we address the MITRE attack and remote monitoring and maintenance and compliance, and what elements could SaaS Alerts, because cloud is taking over. And the reality is we're going to have some physical devices. How are we going to be able to simplify our stack? Because I buy subscriptions just so I can get ideas from others about how to better use my tools, right? I don't necessarily have the best method. And so I'm kind of going, where is it that what can I drop? What do I need to keep? What do I need to add? That's something we do every year.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because everything you just said about end of the day, like the cloud and SaaS applications, like that's where it's at. Like the entire thesis of this entire company was based on that exact notion that the user is going to ends up trumping everything on a go forward basis. And where is the user? The user is in cloud and SaaS-based applications going forward.
Yeah. And we still have to secure them across multiple devices without a perimeter. And you got to keep going, right?
Right. Yeah.
And compliance is going to continue to drive a lot more of this too.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's where we started using Intune, is just because nobody's really sitting at the office, connecting to a DC and getting any policy changes.
You can speak.
Yes, Ben.
I can.
Good to have you back.
On the microphone.
So Ben, can you give us a synopsis of what your thoughts were as we were going through this, but you were sharing a lot of good information in chat?
I was just saying that we've kind of switched away from the whole conventional DC, just to Intune, and having security compliance policy set up in that has been very helpful for us. So even if somebody, like I have a VM, a virtual machine that I use at home when I'm doing work things. So I'm not loading ConnectWise and all this other stuff on my personal computer. And the first thing I did when I signed in was that the Intune policy kicked in and said, you have to encrypt this drive, do this and do this and do this. And unless I have that window open, I'm not going to know if one of my other guys is actually compliant. So knowing that would be good. I also I know what Cyber CNS, we actually run them too. So But I think one time somebody asked, there was like, oh, can you guys do patch management and all this other stuff too? And most of the guys in the call like, no, that's not where your focus is. So I definitely like where you guys are going. And sticking with the security is really important to us.
Cool. Thanks, Ben. And by the way, we've been having lots of conversations, Andrew. You have a ton of them, but I think it's just a matter of time. It could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, it could be 18 months on the outside. But eventually, if you want a cyber insurance plan, if you don't have this level of protection on 365 or other SaaS-based applications, you're not going to get the cyber insurance plan. Like no one's going to cover you. And we've had conversations with cyber insurance companies that are very, very interested in our information specific to that point.
Which, Jim, kind of maybe is a great segue. Chip, is it okay to segue into next pieces of this, which is we have a webinar with one of the leading breach attorneys in the country. His name's Spencer Pollock. Michelle, is it possible to put the registration URL in chat? And the day is it the 20th?
It's the 20th.
It's 20th, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
Tuesday at 1 p.m.
And the reason I wanted to do this, and I'll share my screen again, the reason I thought it would be important to bring in Spencer was to just like, you can look through the lens of a threat actor to gain knowledge of, which we will momentarily with MITRE ATT&CK. But whoops, let me go back. I wanted everybody to see what it's like through the lens of a breach attorney, right? Because the breach attorney is the one who if many of you may know, but let's just look how the anatomy of an attack goes. So if a customer is compromised, or let's just say a business, whether it's your customer, a business is compromised, and they invoke their cyber insurance, the cyber insurance, the first call they're going to make is they have a team of breach attorneys, maybe on staff, or a lot of times they're third party. McDonald Hopkins is a big player in it. And this person becomes the quarterback. And most of the time there's an MSP involved. And more than not, I shouldn't say more than that, the MSP is always going to be interviewed. And so we want to go through the lens of Spencer and talk through him. Okay, when there's a business email compromise, or when there's some type of incident that's related to Office 365 and or Azure, but specifically this is going to be focused around O365. What's your perspective on what the MSP should and shouldn't be doing? Where's the responsibility, with or without MSA, et cetera? And so I think this is going to be a great perspective on this. Jim, any thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. This is, another great idea by you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. So that's coming up. What I wanted to do next was and Jim, maybe you can give me because I can't see. I have this in full screen mode, but if you look at people raising their hands or saying yes, were you on the cyber call this past week with Brian Blakely? Anybody?
Unfortunately, I was not.
Any yeses out there, Jim?
Let's see. We want to?
If not, just
anyone in chat, you want to just put yes or no?
Like Scott was.
Scott was. Oh yeah, Scott's awesome. He's over there. Not that if you weren't there, you're not awesome. But
I was gonna say, now I feel a little bad.
All right. So here's what the premise of this call was, right? Brian Blakely is he's a security practitioner first. He built a number of MSPs. He exited all of them very successfully. He then built a team of fractional CISOs. He ironically just sold that company to a large scale MSP, actually, that was building out a whole security practice. But here's my point. Brian's conversations always focus on translating risk to revenue doing something in a conversation that actually your business owners can understand. So here's why I wanted to put this in there. You're probably looking at this screen going, what in that, Andrew, you've lost your mind more so than you normally have. But just kind of see if you can get in where I'm coming from here, right? We freak out because someone doesn't have MFA, right? And rightly so, right? They don't have EDR, they don't have PAM, they don't have whatever security control, right? That we feel is utterly fundamental, right? Inventories being the number one, but that's a whole nother conversation. This is the analogy, Jim. It's like you went in for blood work, right? And the physician's like, Jim, your A1C is high. It's really, really high. Let's keep talking about A1C, right? A1C is MFA, right? And oh my God, if you don't start doing this and this and this, this and this and this is going to happen. Does this sound familiar? Like if you don't have MFA, this and this and this could happen.
Right.
Right. Doesn't it sound very similar?
It does.
Right. But again, it's people that don't understand, like, and I bet you Andy's probably, I'd love to have Andy because he's in the healthcare field, but right, Andy, I mean, again, if I don't put this in terms of, if I know what A1C is and I know the impact it can have and that it leads to diabetes and that I have a family history of diabetes and I have a fear, right, of potentially dying of diabetes. Well, it can have some impact, right? But I have to make this relatable and actionable, right, to myself. Does that make sense to everybody so far?
Yeah, sounds like SaaS should be running pharmaceutical ads.
Exactly.
No, it would be home security system ads as an equivalent, right?
Mhm.
If you want to say, I've gone to this Ring alarm and now Amazon's done this collaboration share with Wi-Fi type of thing, and I may not be secure. Things happen. Breaches
Mhm.
occur with the vendors that you use that impact your practice. I mean, quite literally, one of the challenges that I've discovered I have difficulty relating is that I was getting way too technical, and I need to bring everything up to the highest level, which is, hey man, for example, I used to be 310 pounds and now I'm not. And I gave up flour and sugar and I weighed my food. You have a practice that has been running the same way for years. And your lifestyle, this cyber hygiene that you practice is hurting you. And you have to do something different today. You have to use MFA. I don't want to. I know. I didn't want to stop eating, right? I have to do other things. I know. I had to weigh and measure my food. I don't want to do it. It impacts my profitability. I'm going to tell you, a $4 million hit from an average ransomware today or breach is going to be a lot more expensive than changing these little things and making.
So that's a perfect.
Was that true, by the way, Andy? Was that true?
Yeah, it's true.
Wow,
Wow.
you look
Good,
awesome.
good for you. Congratulations, by the way. It's awesome.
It is awesome. So I love what you said, $4 million, because it actually ties right into this, Andy. So think about how we normally communicate to our customers, right? We want to talk about our passion for their lack of security hygiene, right? But think about it. If we don't, we got to think about the goal, right? And I put this in here and I send this to everybody if you want. But again, our goal is to make it easy for leaders and owners to understand, right, in their language, right, what the risk is, but more importantly, something that they can do something with. So does that make sense, first off?
Yes.
Second part is, like, again, we go in with, oh my gosh, here's your AD hygiene. You have all these, users beyond 30 days, and you have all these vulnerabilities. You have 50 critical vulnerabilities, right? Scott, you were on this call, right? And Brian did a masterful job turning this into the language the business owner understands. The business owner doesn't understand what 50 critical vulnerabilities is. It's going to put them to sleep. But if you say, hey, there's critical weaknesses in your systems that drive your accounting functions, and if we do nothing, these weaknesses could be exploited. Your mission critical business operations could be severely impacted. And based on the defined risk thresholds we just discovered, right, together. Remember, we sat down and we said, give me a number or a transaction number in your company that would be insignificant. And you said, well, $100,000 is, we could deal with a hit like that. And then we said, well, what would it be a number that could be game ending, financial ending for you guys? And you were saying 2 to 4 million. And you're a healthcare company with all these records. So then you could say, look, based on this, the potential impact could be $2 to $4 million and could have significant impact on your reputation. Did we talk about MFA or any control or anything in there at all?
No. It was pure business.
Right.
It's a conversation that
And
people can relate to.
You teed the question up for the customer to say, I get it. What do I do about it?
Right.
One of the things that came up on Andrew's call also was the book, The Story Brand. And if you haven't read it, it's about making them the hero of this process, right? We're only enabling them. And before we were trying to lead them. And now we're saying, look, this is ways that we help you transform, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So think about this. And this is where I need your help, but I put up a few scenarios. MITRE does a great job. Again, this is nothing we would ever talk to our customers unless they had a security team, right? Or you were, with an IT team that you're co-managing that was interested enough in this. But this is where we can look at building scenario-based conversations. So MITRE does a fabulous job describing the tactics, the techniques, and procedures that threat actors use and exploit through different mediums. In this case, there's a framework and a whole methodology around O365 attacks. And when we look at it, I pulled a few of them to spur some conversation. The first of the tactics is, how they gain access, and shocker, right? The technique is phishing. I know everybody's shocked about that, right?
Mhm.
And Chip and Jim, this is where we were on Sunday evening emailing each other back and forth. And this was what spurred, right, Chip, the conversation of email forwarding, right? The procedure that a threat actor uses. Now, again, by in and of itself, even though this is a real world example of a threat actor pulling off a perfect initial access tactic, which is, they probably had the CEO click on an email, brought them to a web page, exchanged credentials, threat actor got them, logged into the O365 account. And again, let's take the assumption here that MFA, or there was not like OTP MFA or, biometric or something like that. They were easily able to, get by. And they did set up email forwarding, and hence the threat actor figured out, through a series of emails where the crown jewels were, and then you exploited through the business email compromise several millions of dollars. Real world scenario. The second one is looking at the tactic of persistence and what a threat actor might also do, right? Aside from compromising it, they might start setting up additional accounts. Again, certainly sitting and keeping persistence, because that's what they want to do as long as possible, evading any detection. And here it gives another real world example of, in this case, it was a state sponsored threat actor that's sitting in the account, obviously looking for, critical intelligence on their, assumed adversary, like a different country. But before I move on, we get the tactics, the techniques and procedures. Again, we wouldn't use these to our customers, but does it make sense about how these fit very nicely in MITRE?
It makes sense to me, but we already went over it.
Oh.
Sunday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, ditto.
So Chip, here's where I'll lean on you a little bit on mitigations, but then, this is where I wanted us to take it, here's the mitigations. I'm going to come back to this in a second, Chip, but the goal would be, and I created one, but I want you guys to start to think about this when you think about your customers and the fact that maybe they don't have O365 or M365 monitoring in place. How is it that we can create conversations that can mean something to them in their terms. So you're missing an essential safeguard around how you log in and monitor and how we monitor your most critical application, right? One of your most critical applications. If these business applications were compromised, it could mean access to your bank accounts that would be susceptible to wire transfers and fraud. It's conceivable in excess of $1 million. And then you can put it either in terms of dollars, or again, sometimes what's impactful is a multiple of their revenue as well. So let me come back here. Chip, you want to just basically talk, with these two TTPs, what things, typical mitigations could be in place, but then also what could be used in SaaS alerts today?
Yeah, so both of the scenarios that you laid out, Andrew, in the previous slides are scenarios that SaaS alerts can effectively see all of that behavior. And this kind of takes us full circle back to the very beginning where I asked the question, should we be looking at the contents of email to go back even further in the chain, right, to the actual evaluation of the phishing piece itself? And I think we covered that ground, so I'm not going to go back over it. But all of the actions that you describe in these scenarios are available as events today in SaaS alerts. By default, most of them show up as either immediate or critical events. Sometimes MSPs turn them down or turn them up and change them, whatever, but nevertheless, they're there. So they're available to build into a respond rule and to apply a trigger. The trigger that I would apply if any of these kind of events were collected together, triggered the rule, I would immediately lock the account and revoke all the tokens, giving my team the opportunity to reach out to, in this case, in your examples, the CEO and say, look, here's what's going on with your account. We're pretty sure based upon, how you behave normally day to day that this is not you. So let's go about the process of locking it down. This is all kind of.
Do you lose Chip?
Chip, we lost you this for a second. Chip, you there? Okay. Chip's having bandwidth issues.
No worries. Okay. So Jim, maybe we, I'd love to, if we could get some, collaboration from the group here in the last few minutes of, is this helpful? And could you give us maybe some thoughts on how you might want to communicate this in terms that you think one of your business owners or prospects could understand in their world, in their terminology, not our terminology?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd love to hear some ideas. I mean, I'm a big fan, like, Andrew, as we're emailing back and forth and stuff, ideas around or comparing it to like triaging, right? Medical issues. If like lots of times I talk to MSPs and they're like, oh, well, we're slammed with, end user support around, printer issues and Outlook issues. And I'm like, okay, like, let's think about that in terms of how you would triage somebody, right? Like compare that to like, a skinned knee or, a sprained ankle. Whereas, a major security risk or issue, could be a major wound, to the chest where you're bleeding out, right? Like, what are you going to attend to first? Obviously, the chest wounds. That actually represents the highest risk of casualty. So, I think we need to, as a community, and obviously we're kind of speaking to the choir because all these folks on this call are using, SaaS alerts, but we have to get our, really security minded in general, but we have to get our minds as a community around the idea that, not every issue is created equal anymore. And that some of these issues can literally take down businesses. And those are the ones that need the most attention. That's where we should be spending our time from a priority standpoint.
Right. No, I agree wholeheartedly, Jim. What I'm wondering though, to take it a step further, is how do we help our partners? And this is where I wanted some of the collaboration. have the conversation that means something to the customer, right? Again, we know that that these controls and lack of controls and because again, we know like MFA and EDR and and even SaaS alerts isn't ubiquitous yet, right? We're
Right.
sitting there pulling our hair out. It's on us to, I see it as it's on us to be better communicators in their how they speak.
Right. Well, that's why I love, Andy's, first of all, it's personal, right? Which always gets people to pay attention. But it's also very relatable.
Sure.
I think that's a great way to do it.
Absolutely. Anybody want to take a shot at how they might want to communicate it to a customer?
Andy's got
I,
Go ahead.
hand raise supersedes. I always cut off Andy. No, I'm not
Yeah.
talking. Go ahead, Andy.
No, I was just going to say, Andrew and Jim, the thing that I think is really powerful is helping us divide this communication, both for existing customers where we have a trust relationship established, and it's really an education, versus a prospect where we're attempting to establish that trust relationship. And there are two succinct communications, and they involve different aspects of it. As I initially tried to say, this is how we can draw people in, right? We give them something personal to relate to. Hey, I might want to know you more, right? And build on what are my other clients saying about this? And how can I talk to you about cloud security when everyone's just been moving you to the cloud for the last 3 years? Now you've got to deal with more. What do you mean? I thought this was a solution. And there's whether you communicate life cycle of this, and that now it's become vulnerable and we have to protect it this way, or we talk about, just like as we get older in life, right, we have to take vitamins and we have to exercise differently, we have to get more, our sleep counts more. I don't know if that's just an awareness thing. Raising awareness versus educating would be, I guess, the real way to say this.
Yeah.
Well, but you nailed it, Andy. Like, again, with a net new customer or prospect, this is where something like challenger sale comes in, right? And if you've ever heard of challenger sale and what they call commercial insights, this is our place where we can push them a little bit, and say, you told me, you said you're in the cloud, which, so you think, you're secure. I get that a lot, and let me share with you why that's a common misconception, Mr. You're gonna have to make it a little comfortable. Let me show you why that's a really common misconception, and why people feel that because they were moved to the cloud, that they're secure.
Andrew,
you feel yeah.
It's unfortunate. Today I have a hard stop at 2, so you guys keep going as long as you can. But I just wanted to highlight this. So I did a count. Today's week 9 calls, and we hit a record at the top of the call for 37. So we beat the record at 34. So
nice.
Thank you all for spreading the word and participating.
I'm here because of Alex. Alex told me.
Okay. Thank you.
She did.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Scott, for listening. And
No
we'll
problem.
see you all soon. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.
See you, Jim.
Andrew, I was just going to say that everything I've learned about being a CISO works in reverse. You're still the maybe you're not the intermediary anymore, but you still have to speak like it. You're not the IT team. You're the guy translating what the IT team's going to do in business in risk terms to the CEO or to whomever's in charge. And the vCISO has gotten so popular because that doesn't exist. They don't know. They're making decisions on whatever that guy just said that he said was very important. It needs to be put into business terms, risk. Don't talk about tech. When I have a vulnerability, whatever you want to call it, vulnerability scan results, and I'm going to go over it, I tell people, I say, when we onboard, it's usually the first month times 2. I said, every acronym I use, I'll take $100 off every time I use an acronym. And I already know, I already trained myself not to, but it just kind of lowers all right, he's going to throw me all this shit. It's just, And I don't use any acronyms unless it's there. I said unless it's yours. and it just lowers the defense, and I just I'm a CCSO with EC Council, and there are lots of good people on YouTube that have hundreds of videos on being a CISO. But that whole dialogue is about getting rid of the tech, knowing the tech, but getting rid of it when you go in front of people that don't have any idea. They're not going to listen, they're not going to care, and you're not going to get what you need to get done. So the point is the CISO mindset, even if we're not, that mindset's still what we need to go sell with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually really well said. Awesome. Any closing thoughts, comments until next week? All right. Michelle, are you still with us?
I am.
All right. Thank you for putting on a great event as always, Michelle. And I know we didn't do our poll as I thought about it in hindsight.
My favorite
but,
part.
I know, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, wishing everybody a fantastic week. If you'd like the PowerPoint, I'll get it over to Michelle and she can distribute it.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Take care, everybody. Look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.